Against the hazy skyline in the hills of Appalachia stands the skeleton of a factory that once catapulted the American South into a labor revolution. What began as a group of women walking out in a peaceful protest of unfair working conditions escalated into a strike that led to the deployment of the Tennessee National Guardsmen and a United States Senate committee investigation. The strike seized national attention. One band of women standing up for their right to strike leads history to record them as the pioneers of a wave of strikes that swept across the southern textile industry. This revolution began in Elizabethton, Tennessee, with poor, hard-working, and tough mountain women. Beautiful, independent, and sometimes dangerous. The revolution for Southern laborers' rights began with the Rayon Girls.
I'm hill on hill, say what you will. I done made the devil a deal.
If they don't give us that raise, we'll just quit work.
Yeah, we was awful rough in the bunch.
The story of the rights of the Rayon Girls takes root in the Reconstruction period that occurred after the Civil War. The Old South's plantation economy collapse did not halt the toiling agrarian lifestyle lived in Appalachian communities like Elizabethton, Tennessee. The turn of the century brought advancements in industry and the rise of the progressive movement. Progressives sought to improve society through reform movements. These advocates fought for the right of women to vote. When Tennessee delivered the crucial 36th ratification for the 19th Amendment that guaranteed the right to vote for women in 1920, many Southern women were inspired by the newfound independence suffrage brought. The Great Industrial Revolution led to the extensive spread of factories in the United States. The progressives favored unionization of workers as a means of protecting workers' rights. The advancements in the textile industry slowed after a swath of strikes around the turn of the century in textile mills across the northern United States. These strikes defined the responsibility of owners to provide fair wages and safer working conditions for their employees. Once again, the progressive movement stepped forward. It was previously held that an employee was responsible for his or her own safety, even in a dangerous work environment. The progressives lobbied for the passage of the Employers' Liability Act. This law recognized that the employer had a responsibility to create a safe work environment. A consequence of these tightened governmental regulations was that businesses began to move their factories from the now heavily unionized North to the loosely organized South. This migration was dubbed a New South movement. It provided corporations higher profit margins as Southern workers could be paid less.
We knew that the industrialization in the South was coming because they were running away from union conditions other places.
This southerly migration arrived in East Tennessee when the German rayon companies of Bemberg and Glanstoff were established in Elizabethton. These factories recruited female employees and brought an element of independence to the women they hired. But that independence came with a cost. Working conditions in the spinning rooms of the Bemberg and Glanstoff plants were dangerous. Rayon was formed in these rooms when toxic acid was dropped on the threads being spun. The Women's Bureau of the United States Department of Labor published a report identifying hazardous conditions in textile spinning rooms in 1929, noting that the predominantly female workers in these spinning positions were left without protection. The women of these textile factories, called Rayon Girls, worked for nearly 60 hours a week, earning at most a mere $7. This amount, adjusted for inflation, would be $1 per hour in today's economy.
Well, I didn't make but $2.50 a week when I started to work.
To increase profit margins, plant owners employed the stretch-out technique.
What they call stretch out, put you on more work to do for the same amount of money.
The women in the Elizabethton rayon mills began to realize the disparity of their situation and fought for drastic changes. When plant management officials ignored their responsibility to provide safe working conditions and proper pay, the Rayon Girls claimed their right to strike. One of the plant's first employees, Margaret Bowen, led the initial 523 female strikers out of the spinning room of the Bemberg factory on March 12, 1929. After other workers from the Bemberg and Glanstoff plants joined the walkout, the plants were closed on March 14th.
We all decided in that department, if they didn't give us a raise, we wasn't going to work.
The strikers' protests centered on low wages, unfair promotion policies, and unsafe working conditions under the stretch-out. The president of the Rayon plants, Dr. Arthur Moffworth, ignored their lobbying and his own responsibilities as employer.
And we'd never heard tell of a union. There was 5,000 people out, and we had asked for $11.20 raise.
Moffworth's attorney, George Duggar, persuaded the Carter County Chancery Court to prohibit strikers from picketing or assembling near the plant gates. Another injunction prevented strike activities on roads near the plants.
Yeah, we got an injunction to keep them off the property, say.
Anticipating some unrest, Moffworth persuaded Tennessee Governor Henry Hollis Horton to dispatch 800 National Guardsmen to Elizabethton. With a guardsman posted every 15 feet and with machine guns pointed directly at them, still the Rayon girls marched on for their right to strike.
They got a bunch of troops in here, had some arrested.
We were arrested once out on a picket line.
And the law used tear gas on us, and they nearly put our eyes out, but we still wouldn't walk to jail.
Moffworth reopened the plants on May 6, 1929, with more than 500 newly hired strikebreakers bussed in from far around. Local newspapers, controlled by the corporation, reported the strike to be over. However, news of the strike spread nationally as violence erupted in the little town of Elizabethton. In Washington, D.C., the U.S. Department of Labor initiated a Senate committee investigation into the strike, concerned by the erupting dissent. A mediator was sent to Elizabethton. The American Federation of Labor president, William Greene, took up the cause of the workers and sent a delegation to form a union. Their presence was not welcomed by the mill owners or their supporters. On May 14, 1929, a group of Elizabethton businessmen kidnapped prominent labor leaders Edward McGrady and Alfred Hoffman at gunpoint.
They kidnapped him and took him to North Carolina and told him not to come back.
These actions further incensed strikers and rallied their numbers. The following day, 4,000 striking workers rallied in outrage at the kidnappings. Violence escalated.
There was one man got his house burned up. Do you know that it blowed all to pieces?
Oh, yes. Somebody shot Old Duck Woods.
They had to cut the water off Elizabeth and stop them all.
To alleviate the violence, Governor Horton agreed to appoint a new mediator, a woman named Anna Weinstock. She facilitated an agreement that forced the Bemberg and Glanstoff plant owners to accept their responsibility to pay a fair wage with a shortened work week and to provide a safe work environment with the addition of ventilation and protective gear in the spinning rooms. This agreement, however, was never fully realized by many strikers as they were blacklisted and barred from employment at the plant.
Now, it was really rough on people if they wouldn't take back.
Despite individual sufferings, the Rayon girls found solidarity in claiming their right to strike. This radical movement jumped the ridge from Elizabethton, Tennessee, to Gastonia, North Carolina, to Augusta, Georgia, leading to a general textile strike across the Southeast. The Rayon girls found that their right to strike had improved the working conditions in textile mills. The result of their strike illuminated textile mill owners' responsibility and culminated in the 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act. This act became the cornerstone for all ensuing employer responsibility legislation in the United States, leading to the formation of a national minimum wage and a standard 44-hour work week.
So they were at ground level fighting the fight. And in today's society, you have women still fighting.
The landscape of labor will forever have been changed due to the actions of the Rayon girls.
I am a union woman, just as brave as I can be. I do not like the bosses and the bosses don't like me.